Welcome to the Ian Bousfield Experience. I'm glad you're here. This series of podcasts are just things that come up in my mind when I'm thinking about playing, when I'm thinking about teaching, and general thoughts about music. There are some things here that I hope you'll find really useful. And don't forget, if you've got any comments or if there's anything you want to discuss further, go to ianbousfield.com. Hello. I guess we should call these COVID questions. So many of you have been so kind and rallied to my call for suggestions for material. The situation is this. I actually have 2 podcasts sitting, waiting and ready to go, quite long, quite opinionated, and where I sort of try to rally around the depleted, attacked music profession, our beloved profession, which seems to be being attacked from all sides at the moment, particularly if you're living in the UK at the moment, where our profession has been described as unviable by the ruling Conservative Party. Absolutely disgraceful. Humanity has come to where it is today. We are what we are as human beings by virtue of evolution, in no small part due to the arts, all of the arts. Describing the arts industry as unviable is like denying a part of human nature, the part of the human disposition. Well, anyway, I sort of did a couple of podcasts along those lines, and the situation was getting so out of control in England that within a couple of days of me recording them, they were out of date. So anyway, thank you for all of the wonderful questions, taking my mind off the plight of musicians at the moment, not just in the UK, but worldwide. I'm with you. I'm one of those extremely fortunate ones who's the wolf is not at the door, should I say, and I'm loving doing my work with my students. Incredibly grateful to have such a group of talented young people. I mean, really, I've never had a class like this in my life. They're just extraordinary. Huge responsibility. I have no excuses. They're amazing. One of the things that I considered doing when I left the Vienna Philharmonic was just to go on freelance, just either to hang out in Austria or in England or even in America, just sort of like do whatever came my way. Good Lord, I would have been unemployed now. And whether it's about money or not, and for many of our dear colleagues, it is about money. Whether it's about money or not, just to see your métier in life, your reason, apparently for being on this planet, disappearing in front of your eyes is very painful. It's very painful. I was very fortunate to do a concert in Denmark in August, which reminded me of what I do for a living. I'm doing a lot of playing with my students, but my next scheduled concerts are in Denmark in just before Christmas, would you believe? And no amount of online this, online that, that's all nonsense. It's not the same as really staring the audience in the eye. It's not the same as communicating person to person. Anyway, I ramble, still somewhat negative. Let's get on to some more happy things. Phil Denton has written in, and Phil was principal cornet in the Yorkshire Imperial Band when I was there. He emigrated to Canada and has made an enormous success of his life. And he's written in with a lovely and quite interesting question. He says, Ian, I hope you're keeping safe. Having had the experience of sitting between Maurice Murphy and Willie Lang with the LSO, I was always fascinated by how many mouthpieces Maurice had at his disposal. My question is, having played the same mouthpiece from being a child, do you think it would have advantages for me personally to have used more than one mouthpiece? Also, how many bandsmen would you consider are using the totally wrong mouthpiece? Well, let's deal with the last one first. Never mind bandsmen. How many people are on totally the wrong mouthpiece? A lot of them. Heck of a lot of them, Phil. There's so much, this thing, standard equipment. I think standard equipment, well, if you want to look at it on a trombone term, it was always like Con 88H and a Bach 5G mouthpiece, or a Bach 42 with a Denniswick 5AL or whatever. That is bog standard issue trombone and mouthpiece. And I guess to a certain extent, they're outdated designs of instrument, they're outdated designs of mouthpiece. When I say outdated, they're not bad. They're good. It's good stuff. But it was designed basically in the 1930s, and we've moved on from that. And I say that without my Getson hat on. In all seriousness, those of you know me well enough to say I'm not going to sit here and make an advert. I'm not. You guys choose to play on whatever you want to play. I think after a certain point, a certain age, we've all got different mouths, we've all got different lips, we've all got different ways of blowing. We all want different resistance. Choosing an instrument and a mouthpiece, because you can't choose a mouthpiece without an instrument. A mouthpiece doesn't fit any instrument. It's a combination of the two. So choosing a mouthpiece and an instrument together is about finding the resistance that works for your technique. And so there is no bog standard equipment, really. I think a lot of people would be really a lot better than they realize if they were playing on the right equipment. It's like walking around with the wrong pair of shoes. It's either going to squeeze you or you're going to trip up. And I reckon I'm a pretty bloody good teacher now. It's taken me a long time. You won't even hear me say that about playing the trombone, but teaching, I've had to work on that. And I'm really proud of my dedication to learn. But one thing that I really wish I could develop is the ability to listen to someone playing and saying, what you need is this mouthpiece and this instrument. And I'd make no apologies. I do my best. But it's a difficult thing. And I almost never recommend instruments to young people because, well, for a start, they've got no bloody money. And instruments are expensive. And I hate sort of saying, buy this trombone or buy this mouthpiece in particular. I do like to show them, different options and let them choose to see what's going to work best for them. But the ability to do what is called a fitting, to find what instrument suits you best and what mouthpiece goes best with that, is really difficult. And I'm working on it at the moment. So that's, yes, I do. I think a lot of people, in fact, I know one instrument designer who says if he'd had the knowledge, if someone had been able to give him a fitting, he didn't think he'd be an instrument designer, he'd have turned into a professional trombone player. But your first question about Maurice Murphy. Maurice Murphy always travelled with a bag full of mouthpieces. Sounded like Father Christmas was coming, jingling with this big bag of mouthpieces. And he had the ability to put anything on his face. His embouchure was, as mine is, independent from the mouthpiece. So the embouchure is supporting itself and the mouthpiece just fits on it. A lot of people who find it difficult to change mouthpieces is because they form their embouchure with the mouthpiece, in conjunction with their mouthpiece. So almost if they change the mouthpiece rim, they're changing their embouchure. They have to. And I don't particularly think that's very healthy, but there you go. Maurice, he did have this huge bag full of mouthpieces, which he'd use as a tool. If we were doing a film session or a pop session or something like that, and he went a bit high, he'd just say, hang on a minute, guys, I'm just going to slip into something more comfortable. But that said, he had, I think, was it a Bach 1? And goodness knows, the one that they all play. They all look small to me, but 1.5C or whatever. That was a Mount Vernon. It was a really old one, and he'd had it since he was a kid. And it was like, that was home mouthpiece. And he lost it. And it was the only time I ever saw Maurice hacked off. It was the only time I really saw him really unhappy. He couldn't find it. We didn't know where it had gone. It was about 1990, and he'd had it all of his professional life. And he got another one, but he said it was never quite the same. So he did have that home base mouthpiece and moved away from it. So it's a good question, Phil. It's a good question. I hope I answered that adequately. Simon Phillips. Hi Ian, should musicians evoke emotion or transmit emotion? What a bloody question. Do I know you? What a great question. Well, by doing the latter, we achieve the former. I remember talking to Pierre Boulez, and when we were recording Mahler 2 with the Vienna Philharmonic, and I was sort of brown-nosing and saying how wonderful he was and how great it sounded. And he said, you know, we are all only conduits. We don't create it, it simply passes through us. And that's really stuck with me. And so many conductors have said that. It's not about you, it's not about me, it's about the music. And by allowing this greatness to pass through us, we evoke emotion. We create emotion. That's pretty high level stuff. Playing melodies like you did to make your grandma cry. That's evoking emotion. And that's I'm a gnarly old professional. There's a few tricks you can use to do that. I watched the great Rostropovich, the cellist, do that. Have audiences in tears, and I think, you gnarly old bugger, you're not even bothered by this. You know what you're doing, don't you? And so you've written a short question there, Simon. That is one of the best questions anyone's asked me. And it deserves an incredibly long and detailed answer, but I hope I've gone some way. I can't do that. That's a master's thesis is the answer to the question you've asked. But it's the feeling of it passing through us or us accessing greatness that then evokes a reaction from the audience. Andrew Rowe writes in, how does a freelance musician keep motivated to continuously practice with no performance opportunities in the foreseeable future? I answered Andrew Rowe, great question. Toby Bannon, also then Andrew Rowe, absolutely. What started as an opportunity to practice free from performance pressures has gone way too far. And then Ronald Seller says that applies to all musicians, professional or amateur. Absolutely. You know what? I'm not answering your question here, Andrew. I'm reading you a page out of my diary. We love it, don't we? We love music. I love blowing down this tube and it makes a noise. It's what I do. It's who I am. It's what I've always done. I can't imagine never doing it. But somehow when that motivation, when that deadline is not there, it gets, the motivation tends to go a little bit. The reason is like you're just thinking, why am I doing this? And I maybe since March, I think I might have had 3 days off. 4 days. 2 of those were spent in hospital, but, I haven't sort of deliberately said, I'm taking a break, I'm stopping doing this. I love the trombone, I love playing. And this thing about, we had the break, so good, I can practice free now and, fix all my problems, which I bloody didn't. They never went. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the practicing. I think practicing is me time. I think practicing is my place. It's my space. It's where I go just to be me. And I think we all need that. Some people get it when they're jogging. Some people get it when they're meditating. Some people don't get it. I need me time. And that's where I get very focused, very centered, go very within myself and spend time just with myself and my voice, the trombone being my voice. And as I've said in previous podcasts, I reckon I could get myself up and running pretty quickly. In fact, I do. But I'm starting to feel the lack of match practice now, I have to say. There's nothing quite like doing it. And I think in the beginning, I'll be really honest with you, making Ian Bousfield Incorporated as a business move and getting it up on the road and moving and creating work and persuading orchestras to take me and to put recording contracts in place and do, basically build my life was a lot of work, and it was a lot of hassle, and it was a lot of doing things that I don't like doing, like trying to sell myself and all that kind of thing. So when we got the lockdown, actually, my wife said, I'm surprised how well you're taking this. And it feels like someone's told me I don't have to push this bloody great big cart up to the top of a hill anymore. Yes, I was busy. Yes, I was doing, but it's, you ask you ask Christian Lindbergh how often you have to bang on the door to get a concert to happen. So, and how much you have to pester to make things work out. And so I was glad when that stopped. But now I'm a bit lost, because orchestras are planning the sort of like outside framework of their seasons with socially distanced chamber music, this, that, and the other. So it's like, blah. I guess I'll start making some CDs, maybe try and get some more chamber music stuff going. But I'm still playing, and I'm still enjoying it. In fact, I had to record something for an online sort of masterclass thing I'm doing yesterday, and it didn't go well, and that made me really happy. I felt really energized, because it's like, hey, you got something to work at now. This is great. But as far as it going Toby Bannon way too far, as you say, yes, it is. How do you keep yourself motivated? Well, I've already hinted at that. It's my space, my time, my space, my voice, my creativity, my sound, thinking out of the box, not being a trombone player, not being a trumpet player, being a creative musician, creating things, creating emotion, creating sound for yourself. There's been times in this last 6 months where I had an unshakable love of what I do. I still, strangely, if I make it to old bones, I still see myself practicing the trombone as long as I've got air in my lungs. But that when the incentive goes, it says, you kind of, I thought you liked this. I thought this is what you really loved. And it is really difficult. I'll say this. My dad wrote an autobiography to leave for us to read when he'd gone. And he was sort of interesting bits about the family we didn't know. And at the end of it, he said that what he'd learned in life was that no reward is worth it unless you've earned it. And my dad was a big disciplinarian. And I've tried to draw on that. Andrew, we work, we fight, we have structure, we have discipline, we have basic exercises, we have ideals, and we have standards, and we won't let them drop, because that's who we are. Because we get up and we work, and we try and fix the problems today that we couldn't fix yesterday, that we couldn't fix 10 years ago, that we couldn't fix 40 years ago, but we fight. That's the motivation. I have pride in what I do, and I have standards. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I love what I do, and I do it for me. I go into that, it's switching over to playing exclusively for yourself rather than for others. And if you look at it that way, be selfish. Enjoy yourself in the practice room. Have your standards, have your discipline, and then have your space, your time just for you. Through watching Facebook posts, I've seen quite often Nick Scholl. He's loving this online stuff, aren't you, Nick? You think it's brilliant. Hi, Ian. How about what's a win-win situation for musicians, teachers, and audience in the online future? Less travel, higher outreach, more personal contact. What steps need taking now? Boy, you're full of the joys of spring. I wish I could share your optimism. I think there's a possible good future for us, but we haven't worked out what it is yet. Less travel. Brilliant. I used to travel 6 months a year. I'm still having withdrawal symptoms. And I'm starting to miss going to Piggly Wiggly's department store in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. I'm not joking. I love that place. And I miss going to Miami. And I miss Japan. And something's happened here where these questions have gone completely haywire and jumped all over the place. Nick, where have you gone? Where have you gone? Hang on, I've lost the question. Well, maybe that's what was supposed to happen. Who knows? Hang on, I'm just going to stop this 1 second until I find your question again. Got it. Sorry about that. It just seemed to jump to the top. Yeah, I miss going to these places, but in general, I'm really enjoying. You know, I've got a couple of young kids, very young, and I'm home. It's good, and they drive me crazy. And so I'm enjoying. I never thought I'd live a normal life. You know, I go to work and I get weekends. I've had weekends. I didn't realize what it was like to have a weekend. So that's definitely a win, Nick. Yeah, that's for sure. Teachers, Nick, I've seen your Facebook posts. I'm afraid I'm going to flat out disagree with you. Live teaching online does not work. I don't give a monkey's what technology you think you have. It's not like hearing it live. You cannot hear the nuances. You can deal with the rough outline, yes. Sometimes speed depends on the internet speed. As you've heard from the previous podcasts that I've done, I'm not ruling out that we might get there, Nick, but we're not there now. And I've been involved in this thing called Internet 2, which is the highest technology there is known to man, and it's still not quite the same. I've even conducted rehearsals in Miami from Vienna. It's that up to date. It's incredible, and that up to speed. But I'm not ruling it out. I hope that I will agree with you at some day, but I don't think we're there. I think dealing with recordings online is brilliant. Now, Nick, here's a win-win. I am now mentoring professional players from all over the world. You know, people book lessons. They book an hour. They get on a plane. They fly. They've planned it 6 months ahead. They might not need a lesson. They might not need an hour. Sometimes they might need 11 minutes of my time to help them. And I run it like a lawyer runs a tab. If I spend 8 minutes, then you pay for 8 minutes. It's as simple as that. You know, because very often the killer information is done in the first 20 minutes of a lesson or whatever, and the rest of it's kind of like, well, padding it out, you know, until it's time to go. And so that's a win. Yes, Nick, I agree with you. Absolutely. Now, higher outreach, more personal contact. What you're talking about, more exposure. Yeah, I guess if you want to make a name for yourself, yes, I suppose. Nick, in the end, quality will out. You know, there's a whole lot of stuff out there on the internet, but the best is the best, and that will always be there and always stand on its own. You can't create a business or a profile unless you have the product. And I still believe that. What we must really be careful of, and nobody's doing this deliberately. Let me be clear about this. You know, very often people who ask you to do recitals or masterclasses or whatever, they're at the beginning of their administrational career. They might be 26, 27 years old, whatever, you know. And so for that fee that they were going to pay you to do a recital and a masterclass, they've decided they're going to record that masterclass and leave it up online for posterity. At which point I break it to them that the money that they were going to pay me does not buy a live DVD. And that would cost a couple of tens of thousands more. At which point that plan goes, we have to protect our business acumen, people. Don't give your stuff away. Yes, give content, give content, give content, but it's got to lead to something. And incidentally, some people have attacked me for giving this free. I would never charge anyone to listen to me bullshit like this. And so, yeah, sure. If you're not careful, you're going to give a load of stuff away online, and it's like that joke about being paid by Facebook likes. Ain't going to pay the rent, is it? You know, we have to find platforms, and I think it is possible. I have all of these ideas in my head as to how I can put on a distanced recital series, where once a month I do, as it were, the Ian Bousfield show, and I talk and play solos live. And I would probably leave it up online for 24 hours, so anybody anywhere in the world could access that. You know, there's so much stuff online now, and you know someone's had 500 goes at it and chopped it to bits. That's where, I mean, if you have the product, if you're brave enough to stand up live and make mistakes, which I am, then I think there is a future in that, Nick. I think there really is. But we need to find the platforms, and we need to find people who are prepared to pay for it. You know, if you're going to do things up online, I'm sure it's free of charge. I'm sure people will watch it, but I don't see that as being a win if it's free of charge. And no, it's not all about money. But there are many, many thousands of professional musicians at the moment in the world whose livelihoods are in jeopardy. And so I don't quite share your enthusiasm, Nick. I do see some huge advantages, as I've already said, of what we're doing now. And I do see the possibility of a golden dawn for us online, but I don't think we're quite there yet, and we're not quite at the model. I mean, let's be careful that we don't give all of our bloody stuff away to 1 or 2 billionaires like we did with all of our CDs, because we ain't making money off that, are we? Anyway, this was supposed to be positive, wasn't it? Win-win, yes. You say win-win. I tell you what, I'll remove one of those wins. Nick, I'll say win. I'm kind of with you, but not totally. Now, my old friend from the New World Symphony, Nikki Abisi, has been very cheeky, and she's hijacked my post to put a free advert for her product on there. And Nikki, I'll send you the invoice for the advertisement space. And I thought you were very cheeky to do that. However, I think your product does deserve mentioning. So all is forgiven. And thank you for helping me choose those clothes in Miami Beach all those years ago. I still have some of them. And she's got this thing called Extendabone, which is where you can clip something onto a slide. Where if you've got like short arms, if you're a kid, and you can't reach. And I think that's a good idea, because in fact, I might get one for my little boy. He's 7. He's playing the trombone now, and we've all seen kids that have had their faces screwed up because they're yanking the trombone to one side to get past, in some cases, 4th position. And the reason why I think this is a good idea, the main message behind this from me is, apart from that, I think I've seen a deterioration in quality of slide techniques in my lifetime, because, I think I've said this before, I only started playing a trombone with a valve when I was 44 years old. I used to have to play things like Force of Destiny using 7th and 6th position, flying around all over the place. And I still feel kind of uncomfortable using a valve. It's taken me until I'm 56. My valve register's kind of not bad now. Pathetic, eh? So ultimately, I think if it creates a system where people don't need to rely, or don't start relying on the valve to stop them using 6th and 7th, apart from the fact it sounds better when you're playing sixth and seventh than when you use a valve. A valve is a poor substitute for that, for playing in sixth and seventh. If you need to use it, faster passages sometimes, perhaps, and certainly down in the valve register itself, below low E. Yes, of course you bloody need ones. But if by getting kids started, getting used to using sixth and seventh, rather than, okay, well, we'll wait till we get you a trombone with a valve on, then I would certainly support this, because I think, as I say, I think it's hindering people learning a really good, precise slide technique. So there you go, Nikki. How about that? Free advertising space. Ian Moffat, the amazing Ian Moffat, freelancer extraordinaire in London, the man, the trombonist for all occasions. Actually, Ian, you featured in the last podcast that I didn't release, because I kind of went along the lines of, how have we possibly made ourselves unviable? What have we done? And I went along the lines of, we went from 1946 with the death of Richard Strauss to 1951, was it? Pierre Boulez writing Notation. What the heck happened in 5 years? How did we disenfranchise ourselves from, the blue-haired old ladies who used to go to the Halle Orchestra concerts? And, what happened? How do we distance ourselves from society? How can society accept us being unviable? We forced Xenakis on them when they didn't want it. And then I thought, well, hang on a minute. What did Ian Moffat do wrong in this? What did Mark Nightingale do wrong in this? What, West End shows, pop music. That's why I didn't release the podcast, Ian, because it was like, no, it can't be that. We haven't disenfranchised ourselves at all. Don't get it. That's why I never released it. Anyway, there you go. Ian, I thought you might be interested to hear that. Ian has written, "Hi Ian, much offence has been caused by the British Chancellor's suggestion that musicians retrain for other professions, but much black humour has been derived from the government's unbelievably useless careers advice website, which is supposed to help unviable professionals seek another line of work." What have we come to, people? For goodness sake. And you know what gets me about this? Sorry, no, I was going to say something political about... I know coal miners who went through the 1980s who have actually managed to bring themselves to vote Conservative again. Now look what you've done. Thanks very much. The question is, which of the following professions, as suggested by the UK government to colleagues, do you think would suit you best? Here we go. Bingo caller, boxer, football referee, resort representative, detective chief inspector, oh, that's for me, Coast Guard, I like a bit of fishing, horse groom, you got to be kidding, museum assistant or brewery worker. Museum assistant? I think we should be told. Most of us are going for bingo caller. No, definitely not. If I had to choose from that, detective chief inspector, I think... No, actually, no, it's all nonsense, isn't it? Bingo caller. You're right. I'm with you, bingo caller. I could blag that, definitely. Bingo caller, yeah, I could probably make a bad job of all of those. Brewery worker sounds quite interesting, doesn't it? Now, Jeff Pollard's written in and said I'd be a wine taster. I already am, Jeff. A lot of people don't realise that. I put a lot of work into it. I train really hard, and I'm at the professional level. Not always paid for it, but then, hey, same with musicians these days. But so I thought that made me think, Ian, when I looked at this, that list out, and I am going to do the official form to see what it comes out with. In the next edition of the questions, I'm going to do the government questionnaire to see what they reckon I should retrain to be. In case you're interested, if I hadn't been a trombone player, I would, without question, have become a farmer. I would have worked on the family farm, on my uncle and auntie's farm. That was kind of what I really wanted to do until I was struck with rather more talent on the trombone than others, and was railroaded down this amazing track that I've been on. I would definitely have worked on a farm. I already knew I was going to go to Askham Bryan Agricultural College, and yeah, I would probably have driven a tractor and been very happy doing it, ploughing a field, wondering what might have been. So I am now living in what might have been. So I would have almost certainly become a farmer. Indeed, my plan was to stay in the Vienna Philharmonic for a certain amount of time until I had enough money behind me to buy a nice, impressive pile in Burgundy with a big small holding and play the bit of trombone on the side. And that was the plan. And either in France or in Italy, but probably in France, in Burgundy, because I have so many friends there. And as many of you know, Leonidas Leo says, "How's your garden?" Yes, my garden is bloody spectacular. It's been great this year. I've had a lot of time in it. Got a good load of horse manure on it. It's been very good. And so the plan was to leave the Vienna Philharmonic, move, do some teaching, maybe even in Bern, maybe drive across but do a smaller contract and run a small holding, chickens and rabbits and vegetables and all that sort of stuff. And we didn't do that because, as I've said, we've got a couple of little kids and we didn't think growing up in the middle of nowhere, France was the best start for them. And we're now reconsidering that, actually. Seeing as we're homeschooling, they don't even go to school. So we're reconsidering that. And so that, Ian, is what I would have done. And that is what I was kind of planning to do. And the older I get, and the stiffer my back gets, the less likely it's ever going to happen. Mason Taylor writes to ask, what companies have you been with before and how did you get started with Getzen and Grego? When I was a kid, I played on a King 4B Silversonic, still got it, beauty. And then I went on to the standard issue Con. I didn't work for them. These are the instruments that I played. I went on the Con, the standard issue Con, 8H, no valve. And then when I went to the London Symphony, I developed the Yamaha 681B, the ones symbolising I, 68 Ian Bousfield. That was a very good trombone, had a heck of a lot of resistance in it. And, I did some really good playing on that trombone, but the resistance wasn't quite right for me. And I was always scared, it always felt like I was going to mess up, and I never did. But nevertheless, my nerves sort of ran a bit thin with it. And to be honest, my technique wasn't stable back then. I was only a kid, and what the heck did I understand about trombone design or what I needed? And but I spent a lot of time developing, designing in Hamamatsu in Japan. Made a lot of friends, loved it there. Really wonderful company, Yamaha, wonderful. And I helped design the first Zeno. And then I moved on to Con. Moved back to Con for quite a few years, actually, about 8 years. I played on a Con, and I moved away. I don't want to give too many negative inside stories away. There were things I wanted to change on it, and they didn't want to or couldn't change them. And at the end of the day, I think the reason why I'm valued by instrument companies is you can do, the only carrot you can dangle in front of my nose is a better instrument than the one that I've got now. You can dangle a big check if you like. I might take a look, but if the instrument's not the best instrument I can play, I'm not interested. And I've always been like that. And I just couldn't, I'm not going to go into the changes that I wanted to make to the Con. If you want to know what changes I wanted to make to the Con, compare the Getzen 4147 to a Con, and you'll know the changes I wanted to make. So I actually called Thomas Lubitz at Yamaha and said, look, to do my job the way I want to, I need these. And he welcomed me straight back to Yamaha. He was fantastic. He built me some great stuff. And so that's when we designed the Zeno 2. Around about 2007. Yeah, 2007-ish, 2011. And that was largely designed for coming in on quiet entries in the Vienna State Opera, and he was bloody brilliant for that. Really good. Really good. You cherry picking, pick anything out you like in the high register. Very, very good. And then as I moved on to doing more solos, I wanted to make changes again to that instrument. And Yamaha is a megalith. It's enormous. And it takes 6 months to get agreement to try and change anything. And it's just moving too slowly for me. And that was kind of how that wound up. And I said to Steve Greenall, of Warwick Music, who, I'm looking for another company. And I said, where do you want to go? And I said, well, I don't want to go to Edwards. And he said, why not? And I said, I just can't play on those wide slides. They're very good instruments, but it's just not for me. It's not how I play. It's just not my philosophy of trombones. And he said, well, look, I'm going to some big trade show. It was a Friday. I'll call you on Monday. And he didn't. He called me on Sunday. He said, Ian Kristen would like to talk to you. And I said, but I told you, I can't, those slides are too wide. It's not the way I play. And he said, Ian, where are you? And I said, I'm at my in-laws in Chicago. And he said, get in the car and go to Wisconsin. It's only 2 hours in the car. So I drove off and had a meeting with Kristen. And I'd known Kristen from before because he had some lessons with me when he was a student. He was a former student of Don Lucas. And he'd come to London and I'd given him some lessons about 97 or whatever, a long time ago. And so it was great to see him. We talked and his thirst for knowledge, it's like, I'm not entirely certain what you want, but I'd love to try and find out and I'd love to try and make it, was such a refreshing attitude from an instrument maker. He isn't the type of person who's going to listen and say what you need is. He won't make his decisions. He'll listen very carefully and he'll work out what you want, not what he wants you to sound like. He'll work out what you need. And so we worked, and it was a new departure for him to work on a narrow slide. And we both struggled for quite a while. And then in the end, he was so happy with what he'd made, he got on an aeroplane and flew over and said, here you go, if you don't like this, I can't help you. And I did. And I still do. And I think, like I say, they make the best equipment for me. I've never been happier. And what I appreciate with my relationship with Getzen and Grego is I feel very much an affinity to Brett and Adam Getzen. I feel an affinity to this family company. So maybe I do have my Getzen hat on now. Okay, fine. I'm a supporter of Getzen, I have to say. They're a family-run business, and they support me and I support them very much in what they're doing. And I know that if I want something changing on an instrument, it'll be there. And let's go back to the Maurice Murphy conversation. That 4147, do you know what? The number of times I've changed that and come right back to the original. I'm still there. There's nothing that I'm playing now that we didn't design 6 years ago. I think, production techniques improve, for sure, the way things go together, but the basic design's the same. But occasionally I might get a beast of a new concerto to play or whatever, and so I'll need a certain lead pipe, and I have it like that. Bang, there you go. It's there in 5 days. Kristen will stop what he's doing and make it for me and send it, So the value of that to me is immense. So that's how Mason, that's how I got. That's my history of trombones and how I went to Getson and Griego. Listen, folks, I've spoken for 45 minutes and there's still a load more questions. So I'm going to release this podcast, and if there are any issues that are thrown up by this, please let me know. I've tried to be cheerful about it, but realistic. We're all in a difficult situation at the moment. I feel the emotional weight that we're all carrying at the moment. I feel the hurt. I'm hurt for you and for me. I'm hurt for us. What we do is who I am. What we do is who we are. And we're a family. And take it easy. Be careful. Don't suffer on your own. Talk to people. There are a lot of good people out there. Simon Cowan, you're a good man. You're helping your colleagues. I know you are. And you've got it tough because you're in Liverpool. You're getting really locked down now. And pick up the phone. Ladies and gentlemen, pick up the phone to the person you're missing. There's a lot of you I miss, and I pick up the phone. Talk to each other. Let's keep each other going through this. More answers coming soon. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. If there are any issues that you found particularly interesting, don't forget to contact me, and always go to ianbousfield.com for lots more interesting stuff.